They didn't get a tenant in because they never stopped advertising. The economy was crashing. That's why they never got a tenant.
So the economy's crashing. That's not their fault. They continued to advertise. They were going to put somebody in.
But they said they stopped. They lied. And I have text messages to prove it.
Yeah. Did they have a right to rely on the fact that you changed your mind and said you were going to stay the extra month?
No, because we addressed that. Okay, and what matters in this specific case is that they said it happened earlier when it didn't. I addressed it verbally. I didn't. I have text messages to prove around the date that they claim I addressed it.
I'll look at it. Thank you so much, sir.
They're the text messages.
Thank you. Thank
I'd like
you
to
so
just
much.
be very specific, rely on the evidence.
Thank you. Anybody want to ask anything else?
No.
We're going to excuse the parties at this time while we deliberate in this matter.
This courtroom is now in recess.
All right, it's so, perhaps the word is upsetting is the wrong word, but I was so incensed after reading his complaint and then having an opportunity to look at his own exhibits, which belie every single theory of liability that he's trying to impose upon the defendants in this case. And so to me, the plaintiff is either thick-headed or doesn't get it and is now trying to exploit his position as best he can to gain some kind of financial reward. Because if you look at this issue of the counterclaim, because the defendant is saying, hey, I'm the landlord. This guy gave me an original notice, March 30th, he's leaving. In the meantime, I'm advertising to re-rent the place. Then he tells me, no, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to stay until the end of April. He decides a few weeks later to say, well, no, I'm moving out on the original date, leaving the defendant landlord in the lurch for the month of April. And then on top of it is suggesting that the defendant created an uninhabitable living condition for him, and therefore we should pay him for moving costs. We should pay him $3,000, however he calculates the damage to his soul, his persona from a leak. He evaluates it $3,965, and I'm not supposed to look at the defendant's defense in a light that's favorable to the defendant because I didn't catch the defendant in any mistakes or lies.
You sure you didn't miss the big picture here?
So I was just a little incensed.
And in fact, we would find him responsible since he did in fact make the request that he extended his stay. They did agree to it. He really would have been responsible for all of April unless there was some mitigation by either one of them. And clearly by the defendant's either intent or negligence left that ad in there and was able to only make him responsible for 1 week's worth of rent in April. So I don't see how the defendant can't prevail on his counterclaim. I believe he should. And as to the complainant's request for moving, I think that's a dismissal outright for all matters.
He didn't need to let the plaintiff off the hook. He reserved his rights. He's absolutely allowed to exercise that reservation now, especially after having been sued for what I think is a baseless bad faith theory. So I would dismiss the complaint and I would award him the full amount on the countersuit.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I'm on board. We have reached a verdict. It's unanimous. You know, Mr. Skolasky, when I read your complaint, I was very upset that you would have been required to live in a place where you were uncomfortable. And so I was looking forward to seeing your exhibits that would confirm your allegation that this landlord permitted you to live in a place where odors were so overwhelming that you simply couldn't stay there. And so I read your first exhibit where you make no mention whatsoever of odorous conditions. So I said, well, maybe he made a mistake. Maybe he was trying to be good so he'd get the full security deposit. And then I read your second one where it clearly indicated the defendant was acting very reasonable in giving you an extended time through April. And so I came to doubt your veracity. But I want an opportunity to hear you and to evaluate what you had to say. But the testimony that I heard here in the last 15 minutes or so completely supported my initial conclusion, that this was an unwarranted lawsuit on your part, that the defendant owes you nothing, but you owe him. You bit the hand that fed you. He gave you a break with respect to April, and you threw it back in his face. And so now he says, I want my rights, because you left out early and I didn't have any opportunity to find someone to take over for you. So our verdict in this case is unanimous, and your complaint is dismissed, and your countersuit is granted for the full amount that you requested of $1,235, and that's the judgment of the court.